everybody, and welcome to the latest edition of Conversation Aviation. Today we're going to be talking about the EASA Annual Safety Review that was recently released earlier this month, earlier in August. Hopefully you saw it already on the community site and the EASA website, and you can download everything from there. But today I'm joined here in the studio in Cologne by my colleague Aigars Krastins. Aigars, maybe you could start just by telling our audience a bit about you, where you're from, and what you do here at EASA.
Okay. Yeah, thanks, John, first of all, for inviting to this podcast and having this opportunity to provide the highlights of commercial transport airplanes domain. My name is Aigars Krastins. I'm Senior Domain Safety Risk Manager, Latvian from nationality, so working in our Safety Risk Management section. Responsible for commercial transport airplanes domain, also collaborative analysis group, and also the systemic and conjunctural safety risk portfolio.
So just to kind of add a bit more context to that, so hopefully you see when we do all of our analysis that leads to particularly a lot of the safety promotion that maybe you see us doing through Conversation Aviation. It's the work that you do, particularly through the collaborative analysis groups, that kind of decides what are the most important things that we focus on, and it's the analysis that you lead that really drives that.
Indeed, that's true. Yeah.
And maybe we talk a little bit now about the safety review itself and where that fits. So we have, hopefully people hear us talk about the context of the safety risk management process. So where does the ASR fit into that process then?
Yeah, if you go back to the European safety risk management process, which basically is the backstone or backbone of all the process which runs our safety risk management is based on, then we can see that it consists of 5 steps. I will not go through all of them, but I think you can recognize that these are normal, let's say, plan, do, check, act.
Yeah, it's like a kind of slightly cycle, revised plan, do, check, act process, cycle. Exactly.
But safety risk, annual safety review, is actually the one which is supporting the step 5, which is safety performance measurement and monitoring. So it is actually showing us the tier 1, accidents, serious incident statistics for domains, cross domains, and allows us to monitor if over the time there has been some improvement and actions put in place have been working, or we have some deviations. So.
Yeah, it's basically that performance check of the kind of the reactive Indeed. Part of the system that says we've done all of these actions, we've identified these risks. How does that match back in terms of safety performance? And maybe it's worth kind of giving a little bit of context first in terms of traffic levels and the size of the industry and how that's changed.
After the COVID period of low activity, very low activity, I think what industry suffered and everyone actually associated or linked with aviation, noticed that. Then we can be glad actually that year 2022 brought us back to the 83% of traffic levels, if we speak for the European traffic, when compared to 2019. AOC holders, we have like around 615. It also gives a bit
it changes quite regularly, doesn't it?
Changes, yeah. Of course, it is not like a number in stone. Of course, it's live. There are new who are joining, new who are participating, some kind of acquisitions and so on. So it's a number now a bit when compared to the previous year. Slightly dropped, but not too much. And if we have like around 6,600, let's say, airplanes which are operating around in the commercial
Europe, yeah. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I think it's useful to kind of understand that context. Completely. And this year there's a few changes that have been made, improvements to we're continually trying to improve what we provide in the safety review. So maybe you can talk a little bit about some of the changes and updates and improvements we've had this year.
Yes, true. There were several actually. I will focus maybe the ones which are really affecting
particularly around the
airplane, let's say, side. We have now more clear, let's say, split between the airplane sub-chapters in the airplane chapter. So we clearly split complex airplanes versus non-complex. Commercial transport, let's say, operations with complex airplanes and commercial transport with other than complex airplanes. We also define clearly the NCC side, non-commercial operations with complex airplanes, and that link also back to the non-commercial operations, that we basically don't have overlaps, and we also don't miss
I think that's one of the key things. Is it's easy to forget sometimes that it's not just about the large airplane, kind of airline airplanes. There's lots of other commercial activity with aeroplanes, and then how that feeds into traditional general aviation and all the other domains, so people can understand that. And
another novelty is that we, for the first time now, we have this commercial transport other than complex airplanes.
I think that's an interesting
this activity is also ongoing and has its place in aviation system, so it deserved to be displayed also at the annual safety review.
And I think there are some other things you've introduced this year as well.
Indeed, the occurrence categories are included. Actually, I think some versions in the past we used to show them as well.
It was
always
historical.
It is a bit of reassurance,
Because we quite often talk about this concept of what we call these key risk areas, that just specifically the accident outcomes, but we realise a lot of people are using the CAST-ICAO occurrence categories, so we provide those.
Indeed, that also enables maybe from outside of the Europe also to understand and follow what the statistics says to us. And another novelty which you might have noticed if you have read or had the opportunity to read the annual safety review is that the safety issues, the more detailed information is now moved to the appendixes. So that includes the information on safety issues according to the aggregated, let's say, European Risk Classification Score, human factors and performance statistics, and the very new part, which was also introduced this time, is on the airworthiness. So for those of you who want to go deeper into the annual safety review and would like to use this more detailed information for your safety work, please don't stop at the ASR level. Go also into those appendices. They will be very helpful.
I think I know the team collectively that Aigars works in safety risk management does a lot of work to provide the these different levels of information. So the statistical overview, and then the more detailed safety issues that then has a really clear link back into volume 3 of the European Safety Plan, and then these human factors issues. And I know it's something we've had an aspiration for a long time to do airworthiness in the ASR. So it's great that it's there now as a feature of it for the first time. So they're all really interesting additions. So then in terms of what we see in terms of the key statistics, maybe you can just talk about a bit about that as well.
If you look at the let's say the performance of the year 2022, then after a while we had of course one fatal accident, but that one was some kind of specific.
It's the one in Portuguese, the Portuguese aircraft in
Guinea. Guinea with the runway incursion by the people on motorcycle. And
it wasn't a traditional kind of aviation accident.
Non-traditional, and also outside the Europe, but we included that, of course, because this was affecting the European operator, so we need to take that into account. We had 13 non-fatal accidents, which is a little bit of drop of the previous year, let's say, average. And in terms of serious incidents, we had 51, which was also the drop if you compare to the previous 10 years, let's say, period. Regarding the fatalities, so there were 2 in 2022.
Which was the one with the accident?
The ones which we mentioned, exactly, you're right. And 5 serious injuries. So.
And I think it's one of the things that when we, in a sense, the system, as it gets safer and safer, it kind of highlights that monitoring just fatal accidents like perhaps we would have done 20, 30 years ago as an industry isn't enough. It shows the importance of the more proactive safety, the risk management activity, because thankfully as the system gets safer we have less accidents to kind of go on in order to work out what to improve. And then in terms of how that fits in terms of accident rates and things like that, how's that looking for this year?
If you look at, for example, the serious incidents, they are basically almost the same number like it was in the year before. The same for non-fatal accidents, the numbers. But if you look at the rates, then for both serious incidents and accident rate includes both fatal accidents and non-fatal accidents, then both have dropped when compared to the previous year. You will notice that we capture here the rates for the last 4 years now. It was due to the change in the data structure of the exposure data provided by the data provider.
Yeah, it's always difficult to get the right flying hours. People kind of see that as a natural thing, but actually the collecting from every operator in Europe all of the hours they've flown and organising that isn't an easy job, is it? Yeah, it's kind of a difficult one. And then when it comes to kind of the history of fatalities and injuries,
I think of course it shows again the let's say the mature level of safety in Europe. I think of course if we speak about the numbers of serious injuries and fatalities, of course it is dependent on the number of people in the aircraft, and also the nature of the accident, serious incidents involved. But luckily, as we can see, in Europe we are pretty, let's say, low at the.
Yeah, I think that's always the message, isn't it? We say we've had a good performance over the last few years, but it's no time to be complacent and to keep up our safety efforts and all of those kinds of things.
Therefore, I think it goes back to the safety risk management process.
It shows the importance of exactly that.
And where we consume this.
So then, when we look at the occurrence categories, maybe you could talk about what things we see as the most important safety challenges we have.
Yeah, as you mentioned before, these are the occurrence categories as defined by CAST ICAO, Common Taxonomy Team, and which are globally used. Normally, these are like kind of types of accidents. Sometimes they are outcomes, sometimes they are like precursors. They are like a bit
mixed up.
Mixed up in that sense. If we compare to the key risk areas which we have in the European risk classification scheme now. But nevertheless, they show the actual involved, let's say, categories.
Yeah,
the key risk areas which we have in the ERCS, these are showing the potential.
Potential
where it could escalate to. So therefore, if you look at the data, at the occurrences which we have had, this is also a good angle to take and have a look. If we look for the commercial air transport airplanes, then actually the first three were I think it's not a surprise. It's a system component failure, non-power plant, together with the third one, power plant. Okay, these are basically the technical failures which have affected, and then mid-air collisions. It doesn't mean that always you have mid-air collisions, but it shows that
the risk of mid-air collisions, and particularly when you're relying on TCAS alerts and those kinds of things to save the day.
RAs, yes.
Yeah.
And then you have like fire no impact, followed and then run.
That's interesting to see. I think, and one of the things that's interesting to see is loss of control not featuring there in those statistics in a sense, which hopefully shows the value of a lot of the work done around upset prevention recovery training and around loss of control in flight generally as a topic in the past 10 years, which again shows hopefully the value of the strategic safety actions that have been going on over the last few years. So if we look at then non-complex or other than complex, what does the picture look like in that context?
Yeah, first of all, of course, numbers here are much lower because the activity in the range is, of course, lower.
Yeah, it's quite a small part of the industry.
Smaller portion. But nevertheless, we have statistics here, and we can see that for 2022 there were no fatal accidents. The time range here is a bit different than for the rest of the annual safety review. It starts from 2014 because it takes the date when the data became available for this domain. So we can see that we have had in these 8 years 2 fatal accidents in this category. In terms of non-fatal accidents, also the numbers are pretty limited, and on injuries or fatalities, I think in 2022 we didn't have any. There were 2 actually serious injuries, but also the numbers here are very low because the aircraft operated are also, of course, smaller capacity.
And I suppose it also shows, although it's a small part of the industry, there's still an awful lot of activity there, and to have, it sounds. To have, we talk about these numbers, but to only have 6 fatalities and 4 serious injuries in a 7 year, 6-7 year
It's a good
period
result,
is,
yeah.
it shows, given the diversity, perhaps operating in remote areas, perhaps, and difficult conditions.
Yes.
It's quite a good achievement in that sense.
This is what I can really also agree much, because basically the airplanes operated here are the ones also used in NCO.
So
and
there's,
in NCO, of course, we have a bit,
there's less automation and those kinds of things as well.
higher number of.
And you compare it to other types of transport, for example. You compare it to road and those kinds of things. It shows how good aviation is in relative terms. Obviously every fatality is a bad thing, but when you look at it in the wider context, it's quite a positive story in a sense. And when you look at it over the last 10 years, it's quite an even split, isn't it?
It is
the
quite,
last few
and
years.
even you might even have some years where there were no accidents, both accidents and serious incidents. So that gives a bit of overall picture starting from 2014. The same for fatalities and serious injuries. So
when you have it, you've had the odd accident, and
Yeah, there was the highest number was in 2020, which is 4 fatalities.
And then in terms of the occurrence categories for this area, then
also here of course they taking into account this limited data set, which is thanks of course to we see that abnormal runway contact, which includes hard landings, and then followed maybe by runway excursion, because you might have also several occurrence categories assigned to one let's say accident or serious incident. So that is then displayed here.
Okay, that's cool. And then when it comes to the key risk areas, and I guess the ultimately the kind of accidents we're trying to prevent, I think that final kind of part of the picture is quite a good one to share.
Yeah, this one is a very important picture. First of all, as step 5 of European safety risk management process, but also this is also guiding the EPAS, the European Plan for Aviation Safety, in its volume 1, in showing the priorities. So here you have the key risk areas. As mentioned, these are the ones the potential accident outcomes, and in terms of numbers of accidents and serious incidents in the last 5 years, and also in terms of aggregated ERCS score.
Yeah, and I think that's a good addition, isn't it? Is you're not looking just at pure outcomes, but you're looking at the potential risk of the different ones. And it's interesting, particularly that the way that changes what the data looks like effectively.
Yeah, and if you have a look, John, you see that in terms of risk, then airborne collision is the top one for the commercial transport airplanes, followed by the collision on runway and aircraft upset. If you compare that to the previous years, then we can see that the collision, airborne collision, has retained its first place, but collision on runway and aircraft upset have now a higher risk score than it was in the previous year, and it has overtaken the runway excursion. And the risks associated with aircraft upset have increased for the domain.
Yeah, I think it's particularly good at highlighting where we focus our efforts, and I know certainly people have talked about what are the top challenges for the industry, and being able to show from the data, particularly that airborne collision on runway, aircraft upset, and runway excursion are the most important kind of accident outcomes to focus our efforts on, and that's then have the safety issues, and maybe just worth mentioning the last at the end there now, the safety issues that associate with those.
Indeed, the key risk areas are these potential accident outcomes. Of course, you cannot go and fix those. You cannot fix directly airborne collision. So this fixing is done through so-called safety issues. There could be one or more safety issues which could contribute to this key risk area, and you need to work on those, and this is practicable. Basically, this is measurable. You can see in the context what this issue is, what are the, let's say, drawbacks, what are the weaknesses, which barriers are failing, where you need to put some mitigating actions. So in the appendix, please have a look. We have the list of all the safety issues, also by aggregated ERCS score and also mapped to the key risk area they are contributing to. And for the CAT-A, now the approach path management, entry of aircraft performance data, and deconfliction between IFR and YFR flights are the top ones, which are basically bothering them.
Yeah, and I think if there was one message to people listening to the podcast or watching this video, is it's to go into particularly the appendices and look at the safety issues and particularly also the human factors and the airworthiness things. And while that shows the picture at European level, is to then see, well, how does that relate to, if you're a safety manager, particularly of an airline or an airport, how does that relate to your own operation? I think it's probably the biggest thing people can do with this data themselves.
Indeed. Taking the, let's say, safety risk manager of an airline, of course, you see which operations you are doing, in each area. So you would also a bit some kind of benchmark, towards, what the issues are, let's say, the European level. Are they relevant to you or not? And there, I think it's the right time also to mention the EPAS Volume 3, where we have actually the safety issues, which are also put there for the domain, and showing, the main ones which we are focusing now, and which are basically the problem areas, today. So and
then when you see that, I think we have 158 actions in the current version of the EPAS, and it shows that. I think people often think, we sit here in Cologne and kind of dream up ways to make life difficult for industry, and I think hopefully this whole process and the way, particularly the safety risk management process, has evolved within your team to really help drive the data-driven approach in EPAS, so that those actions come from a solid foundation of data and analysis and risk management. I think it's an amazing step forward that your team have done a fantastic job to drive through. So
thanks.
It's great. Well, thanks for joining us. Hopefully you found that really, really useful to see all the different parts of the CAT aeroplanes part of the safety review, and what that looks like, and all of the pictures. And join us on the podcast next time, and hopefully we'll have some interesting follow-up discussions with all sorts of different people in the coming weeks. See you next time. Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.